Hello and welcome to this episode of Retain FM. I am your host Pete, and today we're going to start a two-part episode about user-generated content, or UGC. In this episode specifically, we're going to be looking at what UGC is, how it impacts SEO, and what the role of the digital agency can be in helping our clients with their user-generated content. And in the next episode, we're going to look at how AI tools can help with stimulating UGC in the marketplace. So firstly, what is user-generated content, or UGC? Well, simply put, UGC is content that is published online that is generated by your audience. A large part of this will be autonomous, i.e. generated, unstimulated by the audience, be it reviews or testimonials or questions, any of that kind of stuff. But businesses can also have a UGC strategy that can help stimulate this content production. It's also good practice for businesses to showcase the best user-generated content that they can find and gather it together and put it on their website. And because of that, UGC can have both an on-page and off-page benefit for SEO. So, what are the different types of user-generated content? Now, I won't go into, most of these are very self-explanatory, so I won't go into each one in great depth, but just to give you an idea of what can constitute UGC. Firstly, reviews and testimonials. Secondly, social media posts generated by your audience, not posts that you generate yourselves. Blog comments. Any user-generated videos, whether that's unboxing videos or walkthroughs or anything like that. Photos and visual content, again, that can be linked to unboxing, product reviews, all that kind of stuff. Discussions on forums or discussion boards online, places like Reddit. Any kind of crowdsourced content if you're running crowdsourcing campaigns, customer stories and case studies, Q&A platforms. Again, that can also appear on things like Reddit and platforms like that, and podcasts and video interviews, which could come from you interviewing some of your customers or your clients interviewing some of their customers, or could be, spontaneous podcasts or videos that are generated by the audience themselves. So that's, in a very quick list, what user-generated content is. So if a business was to have a UGC strategy, what would it look like? What are the types of things it would cover? Well, firstly, it would need to define objectives. And look, a lot of what I'm about to say just fits into good marketing. These are things that as agency owners, we can help our clients with all the time, but a lot of it fits into good marketing. Firstly, defining objectives. What are the sort of things you're trying to achieve? What are the types of user-generated content you would support? What are the ones you would like to avoid? Do you have the mechanisms in place? If not, how do they work? That kind of thing. So you define your objectives and a hit list of the practical stuff you're going to need in order to get from where you are now to actually putting this strategy into force. Secondly, you then need to identify your target audience. Now, if you've been part of a marketing strategy, if you've had good marketing, even good SEO done in the past, you should have a good idea as to who that audience is and the types of language they use. We often hear the phrase, where your audience hangs out. You should know where those places are. So, identifying the audience. Next, you need to choose the UGC platforms. Now, I've just said where your audience hangs out. It seems daft to go elsewhere. But that said, there are other things that you might want to consider. For example, if your business is a bricks and mortar business and you do rely on an element of local traffic, you might want to put in place a mechanism whereby you push Google reviews, for example, to help boost your local SEO listings. So what are the platforms that you want to push for UGC? And again, are there any that you're just not that bothered about, for whatever reason? Next, you need to encourage UGC. This is, and what are the things you're going to put in place for that? Now, that could be things like follow-up emails to orders or sales. It could be customer satisfaction surveys. It could be some of, some messaging that you put at the end of certain projects or certain sales if your clients or their clients have good experience. So, there are ways that you can stimulate this, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the role of the agency in a moment, as I say. But basically, look, this is a strategy you're putting together. It's not designed to be something that happens by chance. So this part of the strategy, how it is encouraged, is really key to ensure that that this is actually a strategy that can work, essentially, that it is a strategy that can deliver. Needs to provide clear guidelines on how you expect users to create, particularly submit for your showcase the content that they create. This ensures an element of consistency and quality particularly to the content that you haven't created, but that you are going to feature on either your website or your client's website. As we mentioned, you then need to showcase. So what are the ways you're going to showcase this? Is there going to be a particular section on your website, a feed on the homepage? Are you going to tweet about it? Are you going to publish social media posts every time you feature something? Is there a threshold for what those features may need to hit, be it in terms of user interaction, or maybe you're only going to feature video content, for example. So what are the rules of engagement for your showcase? Next, you also need to engage and respond and delegate this responsibility to somebody. So as content about your company or about your client's company is generated online, who is monitoring that, who is watching that, and who is commenting either positively or maybe possibly defensively about the content that's created? Again, this isn't a haphazard thing. This isn't something that you want to happen by chance. So thinking of all of these things in advance is key to making this a strategy that works. You might want to also consider things alongside monitoring and moderation. So, just because something's out there doesn't necessarily mean it's factually correct. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. That's really the point I'm making. But if it's being said about you, there's a massive opportunity, or your client, there's a massive opportunity there. So how are you making sure that it is moderated and monitored effectively? Are there any issues surrounding rights and permissions to any of the content that's created? It's kind of your responsibility or your client's responsibility to have considered this in advance so that you know where you stand as content is produced. And then lastly, what are the metrics to measure and analyze this by? How do you know if it's working? How do you know if it's been a success? The whole point of this is to add a layer of authenticity and transparency and meaningful engagement between the client brand, or your brand if you're doing it for your own business, and your audience. So all of the above needs to work to that goal, which is transparency, authenticity, and meaningful engagement. If you're not hitting those three goals, really the UGC that's being created isn't really serving you or the client's business particularly well. So how can you as a digital agency help your clients with UGC? How do you take this whole concept of user-generated content and actually make it into an income stream for yourself? So here's some ideas. Firstly, you can help your clients develop a UGC strategy. I've just given you the main, 10 or so benefits or target points of a UGC strategy. It's absolutely nothing stopping you running a consultancy session to help your clients figure that out for themselves. You can also look at content creation and curation. Now, as we've said, a lot of this can be stimulated. Some of it, we even mentioned things like blog comments and stuff above. So some of it very firmly sits within the realms of what an agency can offer anyway. Maybe you offer SEO retainers, maybe you have copywriters on your team. If your client has a UGC strategy in place and we know that this is something that's important to them, then that can influence the way that your copywriters generate blog ideas, write the blogs get published, how the blogs get shared, the social media posts that go alongside it. So you can simply be mindful of this. It also helps by curating content in terms of actually going and finding what others in the marketplace are saying about things that are topically accurate to your client's product or service. So content creation and curation are definitely something that you as an agency can offer to help your clients with their user-generated content. You can also have UGC platform management. a lot of this stuff depends on software and platforms and the integration of those things into a central funnel. That can all be technical. It can all rely on automations and that kind of thing. And whilst it may be something that just needs to be set up once, it's certainly an area that your clients may start to feel uncomfortable, maybe feel a little overwhelmed, and be unsure of how this process works so that they can see the information all in a central hub. And that's, again, all something that you as an agency can help out with. Moderation and quality control. We've just mentioned it. You need a moderation part of your strategy, and that is time. That takes time. That means that somebody somewhere needs to be monitoring this stuff. And as an agency, you should have access to the tools to monitor brands online, to actually see what this engagement is like. And you can even respond on the client's behalf directly from the software itself. Now, a word of warning with this, we do this with SEO Hive with our local pathway. So we monitor reviews that are left on Google reviews or Google business profiles for our clients. And now if there's a positive review, we will happily, positive 5-star, we will happily go and send a thank you message. That is not a problem at all. But we aren't in a position to get into arguments or disputes over orders or faulty products or that kind of thing. So anything that isn't a 5-star review, we will then forward on to the agency partner and ultimately onto the end client. And I'd recommend you maybe think about putting a similar strategy in place. If something's easy, if it's positive, if it's a thanks, you go for it. It's taking something off the client's plate. If it isn't, as the agency partner, don't get involved. That is not your responsibility, but you can forward these onto the client. So at least they're not having to monitor themselves and they're not getting bogged down with all the good reviews, if you like, which simply highlight simply need a simple response. You can integrate the marketing channels. Again, that's something that we've talked about, making sure that everything feeds through into a single central hub, that all of this stuff can be measured and ultimately can be measured against either key performance indicators, KPIs, or determine an ROI, or return on investment. You could encourage or support your clients with compliance and legal considerations. Now, depending on the client, of course, you may want to gauge how much you get involved with this, particularly from a sort of on-site side of things, to do with cookies, to do with integrations, to do with GDPR and where content's held. Absolutely, that is definitely in an agency's wheelhouse. Anything outside of that kind of scope, the client really should be getting legal advice themselves, but that lawyer may need to get in touch with you to understand how things technically work online. And then last but not least, if you're an agency that's working with a client on a number of marketing streams, that measurement and ROI tracking across their entire marketing budget actually places you in a position of a trusted advisor and helps you achieve a long-lasting relationship with each client. So make sure that you know the pies that we have an expression in the UK about having fingers in pies. Make sure you know the pies that your clients have their fingers in, and make sure that you are monitoring how each of those channels are impacting a client's business and how that is affecting their bottom line, their sales, and of course, if there's any obstacles that are being highlighted by the data. So ultimately, that is it. I realize this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour of an episode, and that's kind of the point. What I really wanted to do with this episode and with the next is to encourage you to consider how you could turn user-generated content for your clients into a possible income stream for yourself. So I hope you've got some value out of this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you hit that like and that subscribe button. And if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, I'd be delighted if you would share this podcast just with one other person. That really is how this podcast can grow. Otherwise, I'd love to see you online. We have our Facebook group where you can ask any questions to do with this episode or any past episodes, or even just queries about running a digital agency. And if you don't want to do any of that, that's absolutely fine. But I will see you in the next episode.